So
there's no hole in the bottom, right? You didn't do the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
There is.
Okay.
You can open and close it with a little handle.
Very good idea. That's a good idea.
We'll talk about that later.
A lot of horn players here.
Yeah.
There's no rhythm section players.
Or Seifert.
And you're right.
The bass player, that's all we need.
What happened to Seifert?
That's all
We
we
don't need a drummer. We don't need
Kind of
a
like
drummer.
it's kind of like waking up in hell for you, Kenny, isn't it?
No, as
Talk
long as
about
they
pizzas.
no, it's not.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we are actually live on Facebook right now. And I want to thank all of you for being here. My name is Gary Cordell. I'm the Director of Programming for the Jazz Outreach Initiative. We're a nonprofit that's based here in Las Vegas. The Jazz Outreach Initiative, we raise public awareness through jazz, through concerts, classes, and community building. We bring a world of creativity and higher consciousness to the students, performers, and the audience. Joy was founded to fill a need in the community for greater exposure to jazz studies and awareness primarily focused on students, grades K through 12, as well as college. Our mission is to empower youth in underserved and at-risk environments with the means and methods necessary to explore personal and social conflicts and to develop self-esteem, communication, and coping skills to make positive life choices and to become productive members of the community. So we're going to talk about actually our hometown today. We're going to talk about Las Vegas and how it became known as the entertainment capital of the world. And fortunately, myself and our president and artistic advisor for Jazz Outreach Initiative, Kenny Rampton, we happen to know some of the most esteemed members of the Las Vegas community that built Las Vegas into the entertainment capital of the world. And so we reached out to everyone, and I want to quickly introduce everyone that we have here today. First, like I mentioned, we have Kenny Rampton, Jazz Outreach Initiative President and Artistic Advisor. We have Kurt Miller, Jazz Outreach Initiative Vice President and mentor to our youth program, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have Las Vegas and Los Angeles trumpet legend Rick Baptist, who's also the Vice President of LA Local 47. We have the fantastic and wonderful bass player Ken Seifert, longtime Las Vegas legend. We have Ralph Pressler, a longtime bass trombonist and musician here in Las Vegas, played with everyone. And we have Dan Falcone join us. So we just have another person join in real quick. Dan Falcone from Celine Dion and Lady Gaga. And now just joining us on the line is Martin Harrell. Marty Harrell, are you there, Marty?
Hey, I just got on.
Hey, good to see you, Marty.
All right.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. You got in right as I was introducing everyone.
Oh, cool.
We have the great Marty Harrell, a longtime Las Vegas musician and contractor here in town.
Yeah.
So you got your video going, Marty?
What's that?
You got your video going?
I got it going. I can see you fine.
Yeah, but we can't see you.
Well, here it says start my video.
There you go.
There
There you are.
There he is. Good to see you, Marty.
Oh, you can see me?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, Marty.
So,
I can't see me.
You're there.
You're
so
the
to start our
see.
discussion off, today, and anyone can fill this question. What were the showroom orchestras like? I mean, what was it like to be in a showroom orchestra? You know, back when we had all the shows, you know, all that stuff.
Well, it was incredible, really. It was the golden years, obviously, and you know, almost all the hotels had a house orchestra. It wasn't a band; it was an orchestra, right. And you know, if they had the policy of a star policy, or they had a production show, and it was incredible. It was fun, and then a lot of the hotels, the Frontier, many of them had uh, lounge acts, and then they also had lounge singers like Vic Damone and Buddy Gregg, different ones, you know, and that would have orchestras backing them also. And I can remember working at Caesar's Palace doing the 8 and 12 o'clock shows, and then running over to the Frontier. I had a deal worked out with the valet. They knew me. They saw me coming, and I'd jump out of my car. They'd grab my car. I'd grab my horn. I'd run in, and then do shows at 10 and 2. So we were doing four shows a night. It was called doubling back then. There was just, to be honest, there was just wasn't enough musicians to cover all the fantastic performers that were working in Las Vegas. And so, and then a lot of times after that, we would end up going to the Union and playing in Kicks bands. So it was just incredible. It was so much fun.
Well, Marty, you touched on the whole circle that we're going to discuss today. You encapsulated it in one sentence, man. It was great. But I want to ask a question. When you say you work for the showrooms and everything, were you part of the orchestra, or did the orchestra change all the time, every time an act or a show came in? Ralph, do you?
Yeah, what happened was when I was hired with the Al Alvarez Orchestra at the Frontier, that was the main showroom. And back then, the policy was stars would appear for anywhere from 1 week to several weeks. And the orchestra was actually 14 pieces. And what happened was they would add whoever was needed for that particular show. The shows could involve a huge string section, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 reeds. Some of them only needed the 14 piece, which is 3 trumpets, 2 bones, and 4 reeds, no strings, and just a rhythm section, basic rhythm section, piano, bass, drums. Wayne Newton appeared quite a few times, and he would bring his own percussionist, his guitars, and pretty much his own rhythm section. So our rhythm section got to have from 2 to 9 weeks off with pay, which was a lot of fun for them. They could take other jobs and still get paid at the Frontier. One of the interesting things for me is I got to sit next to Carl Fontana for approximately 1 year, and we got to play some of the dumbest football, whole notes, half notes that anybody would have to endure. And quite often he would put a mute in and just noodle around. And I was the only one that got to hear it. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. So you guys could actually, even though you were part of one orchestra, if you weren't needed, you were still on the orchestra, but you could go work other shows during that time, correct?
Absolutely.
And there was enough work at that time. So that's pretty amazing, to be able to do that. So Rick, let me ask you, I know you left Las Vegas in the late 70s, correct?
Yeah, I left in July of '79.
Right.
For 8 years before that, I was the first trumpet player on the relief band. Now,
can you tell what a relief band is?
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. At the time, there was 11 hotels in town that had house orchestras. And so the stars would come in, and whoever it was, Ann Margaret, whatever, they'd come in, Liberace. They had to work 7 days a week. Well, obviously, the house band, the guys like Ralph was at the Hilton for years. They worked 6 nights a week, and then the act was there the seventh night. Well, they needed another band, so that was the relief band. So the relief band, we would work 6 different hotels every week on, a production show. We would, Mondays we're at Sahara, Tuesday we're at the Stardust, Wednesdays at the Dunes, Thursdays at the Hilton, Friday at the Tropicana, and then Saturday we usually, we would go back and forth from different things, but we would work the 6 days. There was 2 relief bands, Johnny Haig and Lou Elias. And so there was a lot of music going on and a lot of playing. And so that was a great thing that I loved doing on the relief band, was that, as Ralph said, sometimes they would work Liberace for 3 weeks. Well, that's 12 shows, 2 shows a night for 12 shows a week. We would just come in on one night and do 2 shows a week, but we would work all those different hotels. And it was a great job. It was what a learning experience. I mean, sight reading, it was a great band. We got a chance to work with all the different acts, the main acts that come in. That's how I met Nelson Riddle and worked with Nelson Riddle and Peter Matz and all these, all these amazing. Don Costa came in at the Sahara as a guitar player conductor, the great Don Costa, for Flip Wilson. So we had a chance to work with him. It was just amazing. There was just so much music, and as Ralph had alluded to, after the gig, you had 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock shows. We were done at 1:30. Then that's when the union started rehearsal bands. At 2 o'clock in the morning, you could go in and see all the amazing players playing at the union till about 4 in the morning. And then we also had, and I know that a few of the guys in there were involved, we had a softball league that started at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I remember that when I was a kid.
Remember?
That's hilarious.
Included all the musicians, the the blackjack dealers, and we would play softball until 5 in the morning or 5:30 until the sun came up, and then like Carl Fontana and myself and a few of the other guys, we'd leave the softball game and then go to golf. And golf, a whole round of golf, and you could do it that time in the morning. You'd be done in 2 hours, and then you go home and sleep until 5 or 6 in the night.
That's
and
great.
Then have your breakfast, and then the show was at 8 o'clock. You had dinner in between shows, and that was it. But was the whole life. It was an amazing life.
Not to interrupt, but in addition to softball, we also had a football. If you remember,
that's funny.
We had football, and this is the actual football we used to use. I kept it all.
Right.
Wow. That's great.
That's great, Marty. That's great.
Rick, before I move on to another question, I want to ask, so I know you mentioned relief bands, and it's one of the things I wanted to talk about, but so if I'm going to understand, there's 2 things I want to ask about the relief band. You did a different show every night with the relief band.
Right.
And that changed all the time according to what the act was. And from what I understand about relief bands, there were actually 2 type of relief bands, one that did the star acts and one that did the production shows, correct?
No, actually, Johnny Haig, we did both. I mean, again, same thing with the other ones. There was, it just depended. We had certain hotels every week, Sahara, Hilton, Stardust, Dune, Tropicana. What am I missing? One other one.
Well,
Yeah, but there was always, it was just the same guys doing all those. Yeah, there wasn't really 2 different band, like just for the stars and just for the.
Haig did have a B band, if I remember right, to cover a couple of them because there wasn't enough nights.
Yeah, Haig did that because we ended up having like almost 7 or 8 shows a week. Yeah,
right.
And that is true.
And Gary, I was on the other one, and so we did the other 6 hotels. I joined in '78, and we did Riviera, Sands, Desert Inn, Frontier, and both rooms at the MGM upstairs and downstairs. So
it just depended on what was needed as to what you did, right?
Right.
That's what an education, man. That's pretty crazy. So, Ken, I wanted to ask you about what was it like for a rhythm section player? Because, you know, as horn players, you know, sometimes we're not needed on gigs. But what was it like, you know, playing back, you know, back in those days for a rhythm section player? I would assume there's a lot of work back then.
Yeah, there was a lot of work. As far as the rhythm section, okay, getting back to the house bands. Okay, when I was at Caesars, and of course, after that, if an act would come in with a rhythm section, you'd be off. But you were getting paid by the hotel, so that's nothing like you're stealing. The hotel paid for so many men. Am I correct? For the minimum band. So if you're on standby, you're getting paid from the hotel. The act is paying their people.
Right.
Yeah, I can understand because the act wants to bring in their own rhythm section that they play with all the time.
Yeah. So then you could take another gig if you want to, which I did at other hotels, and also at that time at Caesars, I remember if I wasn't working and the rhythm section wasn't playing for that act, it was Joey Preston, myself, and Vince Falcone, Danny, your father. He was in the house band that time. And we would work up in the Palace Court as a trio, a jazz trio, which was the high-end restaurant on the second floor. And we would see Spilatro come in there and Lefty Rosenthal. I mean, it was a wild time, man. It was a wild time. Yeah. But it was great for rhythm section players. And of course, getting to play down the Union every night. I remember when I first got to town, I was talking to Billy Chris, great bass player. I don't know, is Billy still alive? I don't know.
I think didn't Billy pass away recently?
I think he passed. Yeah, I seem to remember he passed.
I think you're right.
When I had, I came here, I think I was 32 or 33 years old, January 74. And so I was really looking forward to playing in the Kicks bands. I actually worked in a lot of the Kicks bands for the first 3 months because at that time you had to sign in at the Union.
Right.
13 weeks, that ain't happening anymore, of course. Anybody here, but you had to sign in every week. So I did work in that period of the 13 weeks. I did work for Johnny Haig, a couple of things, because you could do the relief band. You couldn't take a steady job in the showroom.
That's
yeah.
right.
So I remember talking to Billy Chris, and I said, I was going to be playing down the Union afterward. He says, "What the hell do you want to go down there?" He said, "You played 2 shows. What do you want to go down to the Union and play at 2 o'clock in the morning?" I said, "Well, I just left 5 years with Don Ho, and I would come over here for 2 months a year with Don Ho and see all these guys, these great players. I go back to Hawaii, and nobody wanted to play back there. There was nobody playing anything. So when I had the chance to come here, when Joe Guercio offered me the job at the Flamingo, fall of '73, that's when I moved here. It was a great move for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Gary, I wanted to add that the percussion player on Johnny Haig's relief band was Kenny's father, Roger. And I remember, I think it was at the Hilton. Roger said, "Hey, my son, he's gonna start playing trumpet. You mind talking to him?" And Kenny, how old were you? Maybe 12 or 13 when we first met?
It wasn't quite that. I was 10. I remember very clearly, Rick, because my dad, who played in Johnny Haig's band for years, and and used to bring me around to rehearsals. He used to play with Bob Barkley's symphony at the malls and all that. I would fall asleep under the timpani when I was like 3 years old. I remember, just the upbringing that I had. And Danny Falcone can talk to this as well. Yeah, it was just unbelievable, the education we got. But I remember I was 10 years old, about to go to a 6th grade center. It was in the summer. It was before I started the band program. And my dad brought me to a rehearsal with Johnny Haig's band. And Rick Baptist was a lead trumpet player in the band. I believe Carl Fontana was at this rehearsal. I'm not sure if he was a regular on the band, but he was there. Charlie McLean was the lead alto player, I believe. Gene Tedamati, I think, was a tenor player in the band. Ronnie Simone was playing piano. And I had been studying piano because my mom played piano, and I'd been, playing percussion because my dad played percussion, but I wanted to play a horn going into the 6th grade. So I got to play Carl Fontana's trombone and Charlie McLean's alto and Rick Baptist's trumpet. And Rick told my dad I should play trumpet, said I was a natural. Now I wanted to play sax because my brother told me saxophone players got all the girls. But Rick told my dad that I'd be a natural at the trumpet, and I've been trying to prove Rick right ever since, and I haven't quite got there yet. But that's how I started the trumpet, man. I was 10 years old. But I met you, Rick, long before that. I used to go to rehearsals all the time and sit out there and listen, and but that's the first time we actually spoke, and you let me play your trumpet, man. So
that's far out. That's such a good memory. Wow.
Oh, I'll never forget it, man. It's like vivid to me still. I'm now 52 years old, and it's like it was yesterday. This is over 40 years ago. It's crazy. But I don't want to talk too much, man. I want to let you all talk because I can talk all day, as Gary has already mentioned.
Before we got
to hear what you guys have to say, because
before we get too far away from this, I wanted to go back. I wanted to ask Marty something. I know a lot of you played with absolute musical legends, and played with everyone from all over the world. But Marty, you had an association with one of the icons of our entertainment field, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like to work closely with Elvis Presley.
Oh, Elvis was he was pretty awesome. A lot of fun, and he was a good musician. And he was funny. He called all those hits he had back with like Blue Suede Shoes and all that stuff. He called that his bubblegum music. Because most of the people that chewed bubblegum liked those songs. But he really appreciated good music. Joe Gershio really got him on singing some really good music, some good songs, Bridge Over Troubled Water, American Trilogy, and Don Hanna, who was just a marvelous arranger, arranged everything for him. And I remember Joe told me the story one night, he and his wife, Corky, who was a talent also, they were in a movie to see the 2001. And she made the comment to Joe, wow, what a great entrance for Elvis this music would be. And that's how it got started. Corky came up with the idea of the theme from Also Sprach Zarathustra.
Yeah.
Say that.
Wow, that's far out.
But 2001 became Elvis's theme song because of Corky. It was her idea, and and I got and the Hilton really needed Gershio there for a lot of acts, so he couldn't make a lot of tours, so Joe asked me to conduct for cover for him and conduct for Elvis. Now that was a trip. I'll never forget the time when Joe told me, he said he made the comment of trying to follow Elvis was trying to follow a bucket of marbles going down a stairway. and the very next night, this is a sense of humor that Elvis had. Very next night, Joe came into the gig and in his dressing room, covering the entire floor was a marble. Elvis had poured all of them, and then one night also, Elvis had such a sense of humor. He was great. They're in the showroom for the Hilton. On the side of the showroom was 3 angels on the wall,
right?
And they were white angels. Well, Elvis and the bodyguards one night after the shows came in and painted one of them black.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Interesting about the Hilton showroom. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it's one of the last remaining showrooms that hasn't changed. It's the same way it looked when it first opened. I know because they used it for that Liberace movie that you were a sideman in, Kurt.
Yeah, we filmed back in that original stage. Yeah.
Yeah, because it still looks the same. That's amazing.
The only other one I think of the same are the what now is Bally's. It used to be MGM. I think those rooms are the same. Well, they were up until maybe a year ago. I don't know now.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, there's two members of our panel today that have a very unique perspective on Las Vegas, and we've already talked about Kenny's father. I want to ask Dan about his father, the legendary Vincent Falcone, who was music director for many, many stars, including Frank Sinatra. And I would like to know from you, Dan, what, I know that had to have a huge effect on you as being a musician here, and, how that propelled your musical career.
Sure. Well, when I was little, I think I was around 6 when my dad started with Mr. Sinatra, and then it was a period for about 10 years with some breaks. So I got to go all the time. Like every time they were at Caesars, he would bring my brother and I. My brother's a drummer, and actually studied with Kenny's dad for a little bit. And we would go hear the band. And Charlie Turner was the lead trumpet player, and he actually gave me my first trumpet. And hearing that, I didn't understand the magnitude of what I was witnessing as far as, this is Frank Sinatra, but I understood the sound of what I was hearing. It was a 40-piece orchestra most of the time. And to have that as a little kid, just engulfing you, that really seared into my brain, that kind of sound. And it was amazing, man. I mean, it was just incredible to be a part of that and see that and hear that and kind of get some osmosis from that kind of, the swing and all of that was so important as a young kid, and then that led me actually to the Union, which was that was probably the biggest influence on my playing. At 15 years old or so, I would go down there with my trumpet and sit, at midnight, Friday night, and sit there and wait, see if somebody didn't show up, and then somebody say, hey, go get the kid up here, So I go up, sit on the 5th trumpet book, and then completely step all over it, and have guys like, Mike Paulson and Dave Culp, and, they'd look down and shake their heads like, and that would propel me to go practice for another week and try to be ready the next time, and it was unbelievable, man. In the section with these guys, John Harner, Rick was already gone by the time I was there. Just unbelievable trumpet players, and Carl Fontana and Ralph and all these guys, Kurt. It was crazy, just crazy to be a part of that. And I had no idea how intense and how special that was until later, when it's no longer there, then you really appreciate it, right? You don't know what you got till it's gone. So that was a huge, huge portion of my education. I'd say more so than almost anything was sitting next to these guys and listening to how they did it. And then they'd say, now you play the next shot first. And I'd say, is that something, what an experience that was. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, when I first came to town, Kenny and a wonderful saxophone player here in town named Phil Woodfall, they took me down to the Union. And it was one of the most ego-shredding nights that I had. Sitting between Mike Paulson and Chuck Dalton.
Yep.
And with Dave Culp on the other side. And I was it was a big education to, actually, and I got here right at the end of that. So I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, that was my every weekend in high school, man. I didn't go party. I went to the Union, I was like the band geek. But it was so cool, man. It was just an incredible hang, and
and there were some amazing players. I mean, Sam Noto, the great Sam Noto. You remember Sam?
Yeah.
I mean, he was there. Yeah. playing all the time. I mean, it's just music was 24 hours a day there. That's the best part.
And there just wasn't one band, right? There was two or
No.
three bands whenever they did it,
Several.
right?
It was like there was a 10 o'clock band that was kind of the guys coming fresh to town that wanted to kind of get people
Right.
to know them, and then there was the 2 a.m. band, which was all the working guys that would come Danny and Rick are right. It was, I mean, there were some legends here. Rick Davis, Kenny Hing, and name after name after name after
Joe
name
Romano.
down at the Union. Yeah, there's just
Joe Romano, right?
They used to say Vegas was kind of like people go there to die, and I'm like, really? Because this sounds really good to me.
Yeah, and
So-
I've heard guys before, like you listen to the books that these trumpet, at least, I can speak to the trumpet players, but the stuff that they had to play was, I mean, I'm sure, Rick, you can attest to this. There were only a few guys in the whole world that could really play this stuff.
At the Tropicana show, Charlie Davis was the first trumpet player in the house band, and every Friday night I would go in on the relief band, right? And Charlie, the first note of the opening show, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tropicana, Folies Bergier, was a high G, right out of the box.
Yeah.
Every show, 2 shows a night, Charlie would just eat it up. And I actually counted in that book, there was 152 notes, high C and above, in the hour and 20-minute show.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
twice a day.
It was nuts. It was totally crazy.
Absolutely.
Not to interrupt, but speaking of legends, there was a lot of TV work out of Las Vegas that a lot of people didn't realize. But like, for instance, Merv Griffin show. I did all the Merv Griffin shows out of Las Vegas, and there's some great acts that appeared on his show. And I remember one in particular. They had to add a trombone, so we had 4 trombones, and the 4 trombone players that were there was Jimmy Cleveland on lead, who was a legend, and Kai Winding on second, and then I was there. I don't know why, but anyway, I was there, and then Tony Bennett was going to be on the show, so they had to add somebody. So they added Carl Fontana.
Right.
So we had the incredible trombone section, and I remember Merv looked up at the trombone section, and there was one chart that featured the trombone section. We usually played on the intermissions, on the breaks. He said, no. He says, I want to feature the trombone section on the show, which he did on that particular show. With Jimmy Cleveland, Carl Fontana, and Kai Winding.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's legendary, man.
Yep, that was.
So Marty, if I remember the stories right, wasn't Billy Hodges in that trumpet section?
Yeah, Billy was there.
Billy did it.
I remember.
Yeah.
Billy, yeah.
Great lead player, jazz player here in town.
Yeah.
Carl ended up staying with it for a while, if I remember right.
And,
Right.
And the Merv Griffin band, it was incredible. It had Plaz Johnson in the sax.
Jack Sheldon.
Jack
Sheldon,
Sheldon.
right?
I'll tell you, that was a trip sitting in front of Jack Sheldon for all those years.
That's
Oh my
great.
God!
That must have been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, I could fill up this entire hour with Jack Sheldon stories.
I'm sure you could.
Frank Rosalino was here, right? He played a lot of the shows, right?
Yep.
I think he came in with Paul Anka a lot.
Yeah, Paul Anka, right.
Yeah, if I remember right. Yeah.
I want to add something if I can, right? What Marty was talking about, the afterwards, after the second show at the Union, every once in a while, the Boneheads would get together. And I remember when Carl Fontana, Kai Winding, and Frank Rosalino were with Marty, I think the Merv Griffin show at Caesars. We had the 2 o'clock until 5 o'clock slot every once in a while. I had, let's see, Bill Booth, Jim Hunsinger, Ed Morgan, Carl Fontana, Bill Rogers, and myself. and then a rhythm section. And I remember we kicked off the first tune, and Carl started soloing, and in the door came Frank Rosolino. And Frank got his horn out and started playing right after Carl. And as soon as he was playing, Kai Winding came in. And so the rest of us put our horns away. the rest, yeah, for the rest of until 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning is a rhythm section and those three guys just playing head tunes. And
Ralph,
for a young guy coming to town, you know, I was 23 when I showed up. I got to play with people that I read about on the backs of what the kids are calling vinyl right now, you know, the LP records, the 33 and a third. All of these people that I had read about for years, you know, Ed Morgan, Bill Harris, Abe Newell, Tommy Turk, you know, Archie LeCoq, Jim Trimble,
right?
Nick LaQuarrie, you know, so Sam Cernuto, you know, it was phenomenal for me to be able to be a part of that, you know, just a small part, but you know, it was really something to be listening to these guys and playing a show with them.
You know, if I could just cut in on what Ralph's saying, is when I moved to Vegas in 1971, I was 20 some odd year old guy, and I said, thank God I play trumpet, because the trombones that were into that town, I mean, I felt bad for any new trombone player coming into town, because they had all these geniuses that were there. It was amazing when you think. And the one thing that I do remember, I forget the name of the jazz club that was there, and they had, what was it? Tender Trap, and it was Bill Watrous, Carl Fontana, and Yo-Yo, Frank Rosolino.
Yeah.
And
I just did a recording of that group the other day.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, on Facebook, them doing Cherokee.
Cherokee.
Yeah, I think the dad was on there, right?
That to me was amazing.
That was
amazing.
Nelson and
Humphrey. Oh my God, what was it?
Badgley. It was Bob Badgley.
Yeah, Bob Badgley.
My dad on piano, Badgley and Louis Belson and Carl and Frank, and it was just an impromptu thing, and it got recorded. And I gave it to Bobby Shue, and Bobby has disseminated all over the world now.
Yeah, Bobby emailed it to me. That's where I got it.
Yeah, perfect.
The thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, quarter note equals 500.
Yeah. Frank and Carl just go on and on and on.
Yeah, we used to say if Carl had valves, it would have slowed him down.
Yeah.
Right. Ridiculous.
Well, you know, we're talking about all these great showroom and star acts and all this stuff, but one of the other things I wanted to mention that has changed radically over the years, and Ken, maybe you can talk to us about this, is that one of the hallmarks of Las Vegas were the lounges, where a lot of things happen in the lounges. You know, you would see major stars. Did you ever work for anyone? And Ken, did you ever work for anyone like that in the lounges?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
No. I only worked the showrooms. I just worked the house band. I came to town with I got hired by Gercio at the Flamingo. I was there 3 months, and then I got called for Caesars. Did that 4 years, and I went to the Hilton for 7 years. Those are all showroom. And then 5 years of Siegfried and Roy. So everything was no lounges.
Right.
Any of you guys worked the lounges?
You know, if I could interrupt on about the lounges, I mentioned earlier Vic Damone.
I worked with Vic for 5 years.
This was at the Frontier Lounge. He had a big band behind him, and it was one of the cookinest big bands I ever played on. And we did shows at 10 and 2, and they actually recorded those shows, and there's a CD out that it's called Live from Las Vegas, Vic Damone, and it's phenomenal. If you get a chance, pick that CD up and listen to it.
Check it
and
out.
you'll hear And
Oh,
it was wild because it was recorded. We did our shows at 10 and 2, and all the performers working at 8 and 12, like Frank, Sammy, Dean, all of them, would come in to catch Vic's show and hear the band. It was incredible, that band.
If I remember right, and I'm sure Kenny or Dan can correct me, that was the great Tommy Perello playing lead on that.
You're
band.
exactly right.
That's right. That's right. The first time I heard Vic Damone was up in Reno, and Bud Brisboy was his first trumpet player.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. All the names that we're tossing around here is just amazing. I know when I was in college here, I used to go down and listen to, a couple of places that had jazz policy, like you were talking. We would go see, Carl Fontana, Carson Smith, and, and just see these guys, and you just go up and talk to them. These are guys that you saw on your records that you bought.
That's right.
Just, even your names. Rick and Marty, and these are people that I used to see on the records that I bought, and next thing you know, I'm on the showroom, right beside them, which is just amazing. But one of the things before we run out of time, that I want to kind of bring this whole Las Vegas picture together. We've talked about and mentioned many times the rehearsal bands or the kicks bands that would happen afterwards. And, I try to explain this concept. I think someone said it earlier. It says, why do you want to play 2 shows and then go bash your face in even more? Why do you want to do that? And, Kurt, why would you want to do that? Why do you want to do that?
It was well, and Rick will remember this. Even on the Relief Band, when we were doing a different show every night, the Relief Band and most of the shows it's that old thing of hours and hours of boredom punctuated by moments of terror. So you'd have, most of the shows were not all that hard. There was straight ahead stuff, and then every once in a while you get thrown into something really difficult. But most of the time it was not terribly difficult music. I think they had to downwrite it for their tours around the country. And so there was always that urge inside to go play something, real, like, where the band is the star. And then we'd go down to the Union at 2 a.m. and all the names we've already mentioned. Jimmy Trimble kind of took me under his wing. And, Jimmy was the lead player with Buddy and just was very stylized. And to be able to sit next to a guy like that for years, in the middle of the night, or Jimmy Hunsinger, the great, still the greatest lead trombone player on earth.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen.
And just to be able to sit next to those guys and just play really, really good music. And you got Charlie McLean and Fred Haller and, Ricky, all the guys behind us. And there's no show on earth like that. You do the gig and sometimes it's fun, but then you go down and you do that and it's always fun. And those bands, I've heard some tapes of, Jimmy Fuller and all the early bands that were down there that I used to go play on. And they were killer bands. They were really good.
Carl Saunders, amazing.
Yep, Carl Saunders. And it was, and you had mentioned earlier, there was a band going on there 4 or 5 nights a week, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So there was always something happen. It would go till 5 or 6 in the morning.
Yep.
And the bar would be, the lounge at the Union would be full.
That's
At 5
right.
in the morning, it was full of people, man, listening to the band and drinking and having fun and playing pool in the back. So it was a whole scene.
If you guys ever want it, I have a whole...
I'm sure you'll agree with this. There's one reason why we did that, to play our chops, beat them up until daybreak. We loved it.
Right.
The hang.
Yes,
The hang was the whole thing.
We loved what we were doing.
Yeah.
We loved it. And we'll do it all over again.
Yep.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add one thing, that to show you the kind of musicians that were in that time. Marty, tell them who your second alto player was at the Hilton.
Moody.
Yeah,
James Moody.
James
Oh my
Moody.
God.
Moody.
I mean, and do you remember who your drummer was? It was Alex Acuna, the great Alex
Yes,
Acuna.
Alex Acuna.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kind of players that were in that town working. Moody would every night he would call me from Save-On's or I forget the name of the grocery store because he knew I loved watermelon. And he would go and he would pick out and he would stand outside waiting for me. He said, Rick, I'll meet you outside. And he had a cart of watermelons that he picked out and I would take 2 away. But I mean, that's stories that we could never
I have a story about Moody that a lot of people I don't think know, but Moody was almost deaf from childhood. And if you ever had a conversation with Moody, he would be like concentrating right on your lips, he was reading your lips. And what a phenomenal player to be
and
deaf
Do you remember him with the gum?
Is
Yeah, he gave gum to everybody.
nicest person in the world and a hell of a racquetball player. We used to go play racquetball after the gig.
And when you would see him wherever, he'd reach in his pocket and give you a stick of gum.
That's right.
So, Dan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, every time I went to the Union, I brought my Walkman, my recording Walkman, and I recorded.
Oh, wow.
I must have a box of 200 recordings.
Oh, we need to digitize.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know, man. All the Trimbles band and all that stuff.
Oh, we got to do it.
Can I just tell a quick John? Can I tell a quick Jim Trimble story? Can I tell you a quick Jim Trimble story? Can I just quickly tell you that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Those of you who know Jim, he was kind of, well, how can I say this? Jim was the kind of guy that, he was gruff and, he was a great guy, but he was real tough guy, So his son, John, a great trumpet player.
Yeah.
And I grew up together. And I would go to John's house and we would play along with his dad's book, trying to learn how to play lead trumpet. So we'd have like Rob McConnell charts, whatever. We put the record on up in his upstairs bedroom, midnight, in our underwear, sweating, playing through this stuff. So Jim would get pissed off hearing us mess stuff up. He comes walking up in his underwear and a wife beater shirt, hair coming out of the back, And he said, "What are you doing?" We said, "Well, we're trying to play lead trumpet, trying to play these charts. Get out of here. That's not how you play it." And he would go about and play the lead trumpet part note for note on trombone, and I mean in our register, and like our double hot C, right? And then be done, and he goes, "Now that's how you play lead trumpet." And he'd go out of the room and slam the door.
Hey, Danny, that reminds me of stories of jamming at your house when your dad would come to our jam session.
Yeah.
I used to go, when I was a kid, I used to go to the Falcone's house and play jam sessions. He had a piano in the garage, and, me and Jeff, Danny's big brother, played drums, and with our friends. And Vinny would come out, and he would sit behind the piano player. It was Ben Stivers, and just point out all the stuff he was playing that was wrong. And then he would go to each one of us, berate us, and tell us all the stuff we were doing. We were just kids playing milestones or whatever. Yep. And we got the great Vinny Falcone. At the time, I was like kind of annoyed. I was just a cocky kid or whatever. Looking back on that, man, what an education!
Yeah,
incredible education we got.
Piano. I started on piano. I couldn't take it. Because he couldn't stand it when you do something wrong. And he was always correcting me.
Oh yeah. He was man. He was.
Danny,
amazing.
trust me. He was the same way in the studios when we made plans.
I know, man. I know.
His rehearsals,
I know. Yep.
Well, listen, man. I want to thank everybody for being here, man. As to my role as the artistic director and president of Jazz Outreach Initiative. And as a Las Vegan growing up, Roger Rampton's son, growing up in an incredible environment, get the education that I got going to hear Rick Baptist when I was a kid. My dad brought me to rehearsal with Doc Severinsen when I was 11, and I got to sit in front of Doc while he warmed up and ask him questions. The kind of education I got growing up in Las Vegas and coming to all these rehearsals. And Don Hanna lived around the corner from me. Tommy Turk lived around another corner from me. I got lessons from Tommy when I was 12. He taught me how to play Carnival of Venice by ear. Tommy Turk did. I had such an unbelievable education. And the reason I wanted to start this organization is to pay it back to my hometown community of Las Vegas. for the education that I got. So one thing that we want to do with the programs we're starting with Jazz Outreach Initiative is we want to bring back the concept of Kicks bands to Las Vegas, but in an educational sense.
Great idea.
When I was a kid growing up, it was such an unbelievable educational experience, as Danny can attest to, and as we all know, it was unbelievable. When I was in high school, I used to play in Carl Lotico's band every Wednesday night. It was
right,
early
exactly, yeah.
And I would stick around, like Danny was talking, I would stick around and wait for the later bands to come up with my horn in case they needed somebody. Hey kid, come play fifth trumpet, and it was just unbelievable, and so Gary and I, when we started this organization, it was for that reason, to pay it back to the Las Vegas community. And as we start different programs, and the latest one we started is the Las Vegas Youth Jazz Orchestra. We created a mentorship program to go along with that, which Danny is a part of, Kurt Miller is a part of, Wes Marshall, so many great players from Las Vegas come in and basically mentor the kids and help out. And because of the situation with schools, sometimes a kid can't make a rehearsal because their first priority is to their school, of course. So in that case, we've got pros like Danny Falcone who can come and sit in with the trumpet section and mentor these kids. So
That's
what
great.
we want that to evolve into is, and we've talked about doing this and just it got cut short because of COVID, is to actually, after the kids rehearsal is done on Wednesdays, to start a Kicks band after the kids play with all the mentors and invite other Las Vegas pros to come in and create a Kicks band to play for the sake of playing the way people used to do in Vegas. Because something happened in Las Vegas in the 90s after the strike. It was like a very deep wound that's happened to the soul of the music scene.
Right.
And it needs to be healed. And I think through education and working with kids and bringing back the spirit that used to be in Las Vegas when I was a kid growing up, I think if we consciously focus on bringing that spirit back to Las Vegas, to the community through education, we can energize the kids to want to play all the more and involve the kids with the pros in town, the way Danny and I had an opportunity to get to meet and play with like Rick Baptist or Vinnie Tano. I got my first trumpet from Vinnie Tano. I got my second trumpet from Charlie Turner, and like all these incredible players, so we want to create a bridge between the students and the pros in Vegas. So that's what we want to evolve from the Las Vegas Youth Jazz Orchestra with a mentorship program. Then the next step is to have a Kicks band with the mentors, and then eventually as our organization grows, and it's actually growing pretty quickly, and we start to get some corporate funding, then we want to start a professional concert series and have that band, that Kicks band, be the centerpiece of that concert series that we can create through our organization and working with other organizations like some of the organizations we work with now, like the Smith Center or Nevada School of the Arts or all the different organizations, the Jazz Society. We want to work with all the organizations to really create something special in Las Vegas through jazz education. So it's a little tricky. The era of the time when all the Kicks bands were happening, that's gone, man. It's a different place now. It's a different time now. And it's unfortunate because it was such a special, incredible time. So, we can't recreate exactly what that is, but we can take the spirit of it and create something new and bring that energy back. And that's the goal. And so like the idea of bringing all you guys together to talk, this is just so wonderful, man. I can't thank you all enough. And it's, if you ever have any ideas for me or Gary or anybody with the organization of things that we can do as an organization with Jazz Outreach Initiative to help support what's already happening in Las Vegas and to help things grow even further and greater, please, man, just pick up a phone and call us, because we're here to do, that's why we exist. It's not to make money, Lord knows, it's costing me money. It's about making a difference and doing something for the community that I love so much of Las Vegas, where I grew up.
Right on, Kenny.
Cool.
Yeah,
Bravo.
Yep, bravo.
I've been sitting here taking notes, and y'all have brought back so many memories.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's amazing.
I'm just blown away.
I live for the day again when I can sit next to guys like the people that are on this screen right now. That's what I really miss, because we all get better when we're surrounded by great musicians, you know, it is one thing to play shows, but it's another thing to play the kind of music we really want to play with a group of pros. And it's hard to do that anymore. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Man. As a kid, I mean, how many Kicks bands? I mean, not just the Union, but like you said, Carl Odeko's band, you know, all those things. You'd sit and play, you know.
Cy Zentner.
Yeah, 2 times a week, you know, with
Don
guys.
Davidson.
And it's fun for young guys. You know, it's intimidating, but it's such a learn. And there's no way you can learn today the way we learned then, unless you can bring this back. So I think it's a great idea, Kenny. And you can make it. I'm all for it, man. I'd love to have kids sit next to me and let me pass on what I learned from guys, you know, like I still talk to the guy like Tony Krapis. Tony was a beautiful guy. He's now, you know, a good friend still, and we talk all the time, you know, and I think I want to repay him, man. I mean, if it wasn't for guys like that who took a chance on a kid and sat me next to them and said, okay, you're going to play, I'm going to play it. Then when we do the repeat, I want you to play it. Try to play it like I do. You know, that's, there's no better way to learn, you know, and young people are missing today. They don't, you know, they don't hear it. They're not exposed to it. So what are they going to do? You know? So I think it's a great idea, man. And whatever I can do, I'm all for it. I'm in 100%.
And me too. I'm there for you guys. And anytime, anywhere.
Cool.
Thank you, Rick.
Have Rick Baptist sitting there listening. For God's sake, you know, take advantage of this, man.
You guys are all legends, man. I can't thank you enough for being here, man.
Yeah, I want to just sit next to Rick Baptist.
Well, you know,
I got to do the Tonight Show, or the Jerry Lewis Telethon once with Rick, man. That was like.
Do you remember the first record date we played with you and your brother?
I do. I remember.
Isadora.
Yes, sir. I sure do.
Yeah. You know,
is there any way we can make this a weekly TV show?
This is fun. You know, keeping in line with what Kenny said, you know, part of this that we're starting, you know, and what we want to show our students is that, you know, when you have these mentors, you know, Danny and Kenny, you know, both of us, all three of us, we studied with, you know, our teacher, Walt Blanton. And if it wasn't for Walt Blanton, I wouldn't have a music career. You know,
God bless you all.
And I wouldn't know any of you. And, you know, many times Walt would call me up and say, hey, you know, you need to go, this contractor needs to hear you, so I'm going to send you in tonight.
Wow.
And I would make the money, and I would play the gig, and someone would hear me. And that's how I got a career, you know, and that's you know, what this, like Kenny said, this is all about giving back, you know.
Yeah. Jerry, man, thank you. You're, you know, crucial in this thing, and what you've been doing and the sacrifices you've made, man, it's amazing. So,
well, I know we're getting to the end here, and I want to thank everyone for appearing on this today. Just so that all of you out there listening on Facebook, every person I called on this screen means something to me personally. I've worked with you guys much over the years, and every person that I called unhesitatingly said, yes, I want to come on and be on this. So I thank you so much for this. I'd like to ask just a real fun question as a parting, you know, you don't have to expand on it, but I want to ask each one of you individually, and I'll start with Kurt. What was your favorite act or show that you've played with since you've been here in Vegas?
Oh man, it would be a tie between Tony Bennett and Natalie Cole.
Wow.
I agree.
Natalie was, it just didn't get any better. Tony's book was swinging, especially back in the Torrey Zito days.
Torrey Zito, right.
Oh, it swung so hard, man. It was just cooking.
That's amazing.
So, you know, I can think of 100 of them, but those are the two that just came to my head.
Kid,
and remember the drummer was Joe Cacuzo on drums.
Yeah,
Cacuzo, my man.
And they had Harrell Land on
Harrell Land.
Wow, that's crazy.
That was the sax player, yep.
So, Ken Seifert.
Frank Sinatra. 4 years at Frank Sinatra. That was my favorite.
Yeah, that's up there too, now that you say it. Jeez.
That'd be like every night when he'd come on stage, I'd go like, man, I could do this.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's crazy. So Ralph,
For me,
Ralph.
I'd have to say, I'd have to say Stephen Eady.
Oh, they were great too. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know,
Did
man.
you-
That's
Bobby, and the
you
great
work with
Bobby
Bobby?
Hamilton on trumpet.
Yeah.
And Tommy Check on drums.
Tommy Check on
Man.
drums. Right.
That's crazy.
Bobby Hamilton,
Yeah.
Tommy Check. Wow.
Yeah.
So Ralph, who was your favorite?
I can't put it down to just one because I got to work with Frank, Dean, and Sammy, Natalie, Tony
Yep.
Bennett.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen Eady. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all
Oh man.
the chart. You know, the way the bass trombone music was written, it was challenging and fun. And when I got to put my voice with the rest of them, I felt like I really accomplished something. I felt really good about what I did. So they were all phenomenal.
That's great. Marty, who was your favorite?
Oh, well, I was just really fortunate enough to, when I got out of school, going on the Tommy Dorsey band, our singer was Frank Sinatra Jr. And he and I were about the same age, 19, 20 years old. And we actually roomed together and stayed very close friends till his passing. And I got to know the Sinatra family. It was just really phenomenal. We used to go to Frank Sinatra's mother's, Dolly's house in Hoboken. She'd always call him when we're in New York, come over for dinner, Frankie, and bring your friends. Anyway, I without a doubt, the Sinatra family, Frank Sr., Frank Jr., Nancy, all of them, working behind them was just phenomenal. One little interesting tidbit, one time I asked Frank Sr., I said, who do you get where did you learn your phrasing? And he said, two people. He said, Tommy Dorsey and Yasha Heifetz.
Right.
Oh wow.
And I went, wow, really? He
Yeah,
said,
that's true. Yeah.
yep.
You're right.
He said, yes. He said, kid, that's a term he used. He said, kid, he says, listen to both of them. He says, and you'll understand what I'm saying.
That's awesome.
Frank Sinatra.
So Danny, who's been your favorite to work for?
Well, I mean, I don't know. God, that's tough. You talking about showroom shows or?
I'm talking about just
Some of those when I was a kid. You know, I was fortunate to catch the tail end. In the showroom, my favorite show I think was George Burns. That guy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Here's why. Let me tell you. So he was 91 or 2 when I did his show. A couple of years, I did a show at the Riviera, and he would do. Now the band, the band would love him. A lot of these guys. There was a lot of inside stuff for the band, and the band would fall out when the audience wouldn't even get it. But George did the same exact show every single night, right? He's 92. He's sitting there smoking. And after a while, 6th night of it, you're starting to, you know what's coming. You start to kind of doze off a little bit. And somebody in the crowd heckled him. And I swear to goodness, it wasn't a millisecond. And he laid the guy out like a 20-year-old comic. He just sat there as quiet as he could, and the guy said some heckle to him, and he just laid him flat. And the whole band, I mean, we were on the floor. We were in tears because, we'd gotten so used to that same thing, the same timing, but he was still sharp as a tack, and he was just a legend, So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
to be a part of that show was great. And, obviously playing with Celine and Gaga have been pretty amazing
Gaga's
in the
fun.
modern world. It's just pretty incredible, man.
Yeah, it's a fun show.
That's awesome.
I always loved doing Don Rickles because he would always get the guys in the band.
Yeah,
always.
So
But
Greg,
then after the gig, he give everybody in the band a bottle.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
hey,
And sometimes $50 and a little card.
Right.
They still have the card.
That's right.
so Rick, next time we're together, let me tell you an off-camera story about what happened to me and Don Rickles. Kurt
Okay.
Kurt was on stage when it happened. So, but anyways, so Kenny, did you have anyone? I know you were here for a short time that you played with in Vegas.
I left Las Vegas when I was pretty young. My first professional gig was Lola Falana.
There you go.
I was 16. I was subbing on Johnny Haig's band for New Year's Eve, subbing for Matt Springfeldt.
Oh, yeah.
Matt.
Right.
That was my first professional gig. That was pretty fun. But I didn't work on the strip too
That
much.
was a good book. She had a good book. Yeah,
It was
she
fun,
did.
man. It was that
You
but I didn't do a whole lot of work on the strip other than I worked for Haig. Haig, like somebody mentioned, sometimes he'd have more than one band. He would have, like, for New Year's, he'd have like 3 or 4 bands.
Right.
And so I would play in one band and I would do the setup and tear down for 3 different bands for him. Haig would call me to, because he liked my dad and he liked me, and but I used to go to a lot of shows, and I used to love to go to the shows with the comics. I loved David Brenner and Fred Travalena and Don Rickles. And, I used to love the comics the most when I was a kid, when my dad would take me to all the shows.
Not to interrupt you, but if I could, something a lot of people don't realize about the comics, I'm talking about the legendary comics, Jack Benny, George Burns, all those great comics.
Henny Youngman.
They would come in, and the hotels, they would say, well, what do you need a band for? You don't need a band. We're going to lay the band off. And they all would say, no, we're not coming in. We're not going to work unless the band is there.
And that's true. That's true. Bill Cosby would do that.
Yes.
He would come out and start his show and then turn around and let the band go home.
Yeah. And they all insisted the band has to be there, or they wouldn't work.
That's
just
right.
Because they didn't want us getting laid off.
That's true.
Well, I can echo that. The last time I worked Don Rickles, Danny, your dad was the music director, and Don was to the point where you'd have to help him on. But every night when the curtain would go down, we'd play play him off, and he would stand there and listen. And I remember him picking up his cane and pointing at us. He said, they always want me to get rid of the band, but he said, as long as I'm here, you guys are here. And he loved seeing all the same faces, He loved seeing all the same guys, whenever they could. So,
the other guy that was a genius was Shecky Green.
Shecky Green. That's amazing.
He'd lose the audience. He'd lose the audience completely, but the band would be on
he'd kill the band. Oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah.
There's always been like a camaraderie between comedians and musicians. I think about when I was with Ray Charles. The organist with Ray Charles was a guy named Ernest Van Treese, and he spent time actually backing up Red Fox. Red Fox used to have a rhythm section with him. Or Lenny Bruce. I knew guys who actually had played with Lenny Bruce. They would have, jazz groups backing them up during their acts. And there's always been a camaraderie between musicians and comedians. Yeah. There's so much in common with the language of jazz music and the language of comedy and the depth of the message behind the jokes and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, man. It's really interesting.
I used to love that, like with I would do Jerry Lewis's show, and he would sell a joke to the audience and they might not get it. He'd turn around and look at the band, the band would get him going. If he'd get the band going, we'd be in tears, It was
Rick, you remember Milton Berle with the shoulders?
Shoulders. That's great.
But my favorite was December of 1969. It was Harris Reno. Bill Cosby came in. The opening act that he brought in was Dizzy Gillespie.
Wow.
Had a chance for 2 weeks to back up Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, come on.
Wow.
Great.
That's incredible.
Too much. Well, fellas, we're near the end of our time, so I wanted to thank each and every one of you. You're all personal friends, and it means a lot that you came on here. So I love every one of you. Thank you very much for all of this. Okay, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. Okay.
Yeah. What time next week?
What time next week?
What time next week? Right. Just look for the invite.
When's the bus leave?
Yeah, look for the bus leave.
Second show in an hour.
Right.
Hey, Gary, thank you for putting this together, brother.
Thank you. Bravo, guys.
Very much.
Good to see you all.
Thank you all very much.
Bye-bye.
Danny, later, buddy.
See you later. Take care, Rick.
Yeah,
Rick, man, thank you so
all
much.
you guys, man. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank
you.
Gary.
Ricky, take it easy,
God
buddy.
bless you for what you guys are doing, man.
Thanks,
God
Rick.
bless you for what you guys are doing for those young kids. And I guarantee when they're our age, they're going to remember everything you guys are doing for them.
Thank you, man.
Thank
I
you.
remember everything you did for me and are still doing.
Same here.
Thank you, Rick.
Amen.
Thanks.
God bless.
Take care. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.